I've just saw an article. It talks about, how Zoom became the social network of the pandemic, literally. It's just, it's becoming more than just a tool to do meetings and webinars, but rather than just like, instead of doing a call with your friends, you do Zooms, etc. So it's interesting and strange, but it's still, we're adapting as as you mentioned.
Actually, through Zoom, we are running digital suppers. My sons are playing with their classmates at the evening, doing the traditional games, but actually being connected through Zoom.
Nice.
Like it's a window that is opening our life, let's say, to our own community.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen, you probably seen this, but that there's this new platform like that. It's called the Clubhouse, I think. It's sort of like the how like the founders in San Francisco sort of like meet and with the investors, but it's basically like Zoom with a physical sort of like room that you enter, and then you start to do some video chats and sort of like that. So it's just like a new way of networking, but in a random manner.
Yeah, using the breakout rooms like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we can go ahead. I mean, we kind of just started as well. So before we dive in, I wanted to do just really brief introduction about, in our side, like what is Kök Projekt and what is Agri-Food Connect, and what are we trying to achieve, what are we working on in a really quick manner, so some of our audience, if they're not really familiar with with Kök Projekt, I'll just go with that really briefly. So thank you so much for everyone joining us today. This is our fifth webinar, but the first one in the European region, and we are kicking it off with Sarah from Future Food Institute today. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to go really quickly about who we are, what we do, and what do we work on. So we are Kök Projekt. We are in a traditional sense, an accelerator and a corporate innovation partner for Agri-Food Sector. What we do is that we develop entrepreneurship programs, acceleration programs, only focusing on agriculture, food, and water sector. We collaborate with companies, governmental organizations, and NGOs to develop these programs, and we work together with entrepreneurs to help them reach their potential and beyond. Our headquarters are based in Istanbul, Turkey, but we also focus on building programs in MENA, FSU, and parts in APAC region as well. So what we do is that we focus on emerging markets, and we work together with the entrepreneurs to help them build their startups. So what is Agri-Food Connect? In short, Agri-Food Connect is a global conversation that we're trying to establish all across with our local partners all around the world. It started off with the question of how we can adapt to the new normal. So what is the new normal, and what is the new normal for the agri-food sector? And it's in short, it is a virtual collaboration platform that we are working on, and it features a lot of partners all across the world, and basically sharing their insights, their experience, and their perspective on the future of agri-food sector. Agri-food sector becoming a huge part of the conversation of what are we, what kind of a future that we are moving into, what is the new normal. And basically what we're trying to do is to help startups to understand how they can position themselves from the ecosystem players, from the scholars, from the industry leaders. And each ecosystem that we look into, we talk about the diverse challenges, opportunities, and also the trends in each country and in each region. What it contains is that it's a series of webinars, which we started almost 3 weeks ago. And then we are going to slowly moving into the online sprints, which is aimed to work together with the startups, involving company representatives to develop novel products and services that can be adapted to the new normal. And then we will be moving with the selected teams into an agile mentorship program. And in the last phase, we will be working together with them on a pre-acceleration program. So that's if you would like to, hear more about, our work or Agri-Food Connect or the other stuff that we do, you can just log into our website on kökprojekt.com. You can, join to our newsletter, or you can join to our, Slack Kök community, which is free to join. All you have to do is just click, and you can, stay in the loop. So coming back to today's topic, the Agri-Food Connect. As I mentioned, we have Sara with us today, Sara Roversi. She is the founder and the director of Future Food Institute. And I mean, I have to say she is the inspiration for us to actually, started, years ago with the Kök Project, and we learned quite a lot from her, with me and Shirley. Shirley probably more, because Shirley traveled with her with the world. They did the global mission, which she will explain it, more, Sarah. So it's a great pleasure to, kick off our EU region webinars with you, and, looking forward to hearing your insights on the, what it holds in the future of agri-food sector. So I would love to, pass the mic to you to kick off, if you can explain us, your experience and your work and your perspective, but what is also, Future Food Institute and what it stands for.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here with you today, also because, as you said, really we met at the beginning of the journey. Absolutely. And from when we started, many things have been accelerated by many different things that have been happening all around the world in this 5 years. So I'm the founder of the Future Food ecosystem, let's say, but before that, I was a food entrepreneur, and I'm still a food entrepreneur. And probably the first thing that is important to share is the why I started the Future Food Institute. And the reason why I started this journey actually was very, very personal, and has been a decision of changing something in my life and in my approach to business. In 2012, I was involved for the first time to join the G20 of young entrepreneurs in Russia. And for the first time, I was together with other entrepreneurs coming from all over the world, working in different task forces, and starting really hearing how much food and the food industry was responsible and connected with the major challenges we are facing. I'm always telling this story because I think that tons of entrepreneurs are working, creating a lot of successful projects and so on. But probably they don't know how deep is the power they have to change and better the life of the broader society through their job. And I think that working in food is an amazing gift, because you can really create a huge impact by every single decision that you take every single day. And so, let's say back 8 years ago, I started my personal journey, really trying to understand what we could do from our perspective to change something within the industry. And I come from Italy, from Bologna, that is the epicenter of, let's say, the Italian food valley, where actually we live on our traditions. Our tradition are our gold. What our grandmas were doing is something that we are sharing all around the world. Bolognese sauce is, I think, probably one of the most famous comfort food in the world. But all people working in food here have been thinking for decades or centuries that tradition needs to be protected, not that tradition needs to be innovated. And so when I came back from this experience, starting saying, hey, but you know that maybe we can do something in the packaging, you know that maybe how we're producing meat now is not sustainable. You know, there were a lot of topics. And when I was talking about innovation, people was very scared. And so I started doing my personal journey. I went to Silicon Valley. I started being connected with the people that were named like the food heroes of food tech. And we were the Italian food valley, but there were another valley growing that was a tech valley that was starting talking about food. And so for me, it was pretty weird. And from that, I met Matteo Vignoli, that is a professor that co-founded together with me the ecosystem, and he was actually in a complete different environment, but he was at Stanford learning and teaching how to make innovation, starting from design thinking. And his dream was to come back in Italy and teach to the Italian industries to do design thinking. And so he was one of the pioneer professors opening the first programs in Italy on design thinking and human-centered innovation. And we co-designed the food innovation program, and everything started from there. At the beginning, my dream was to start with an accelerator, but it was 2012 and was very early. And when I started talking with Matteo saying, hey, yeah, we're in Italy, nobody has accelerators, incubators, we need to bring startup. He said, if you're going to start from that point, you're going to probably find a lot of barriers, cultural barriers, because you're going to speak a language like an alien. Nobody will understand what you're going to say. And he was really convincing me to start from education. So this is the reason why I'm talking about an ecosystem, because in these years, we have been building really an ecosystem that is made by different entities with different missions and different focuses. The Future Food Institute is the cornerstone of everything. And inside the Institute, we run the educational programs, all the partnership with UN agencies, and all the research initiatives. And around the Institute, we have been growing different entities. So from the Future Farm that is innovating, of course, in agriculture. Then we have our living labs that are living space. The biggest one is in Italy now and is hosting around 2,000 people per day. And inside that, there are startups working with scientists, working with industry, with students. And another one is in Japan, in the Kyobashi area. And then we have the R&D part that is based in US, led by Chiara, that is the co-founder of the US branch of Future Food, that is working with many big food industries that are very committed to change. So we just work on R&D projects that are focused on becoming compliant to some specific SDGs and needs to change fast and implementing regenerative business models, working on tackling food waste and so on. And so now we have the Future Food Institute, research and education, and then the Living Lab, that is the community side and the R&D part. And this is what we do.
Excellent. I have to say, the last time I was in Bologna, I had the chance to visit that space, and it's actually really cool. I remember, I think it was Chavi that giving me some reports that the newly published about the
the books
products. Yeah, it's. If it's are they available online? By the way, maybe some of our audiences would like to check that out later on.
It's foodshapers.org.
Excellent.
And so, we have been doing some books, some documentaries and so on. So, excellent. There's so much around food. So it's an endless story.
The FFI is creating a lot of data on food and agriculture. So it's great to being able to reach out all of these now online too. I think it's a great chance for for an entrepreneur, for a startup, or anybody who's interested in food and agriculture. But I wanted to actually slowly moving towards to the the EU region and Italy. You mentioned that you started back in 2012, which is pre times before all of the the commotion around food entrepreneurship, agriculture entrepreneurship, pre the beginning of that time. And as you mentioned, talking about that as an accelerator, building an accelerator around food and agriculture was talking about a different language. But even in Italy now, when you look into Italy, France, and Germany, there are a lot of organizations and accelerators working on that. But you guys started pretty early on. How do you position Italy as an ecosystem for agri-food entrepreneurship, and how can you diversify that with European other European local ecosystems?
So let's say, I think that in Italy we have been very lucky to have the World Expo. Right. And the World Expo in 2015, that by chance was also the years in which the UN launched the SDGs. 2015, 5 years ago, have been, for us, really the Kickstarter to launch the entire ecosystem. Because even if we've been studying 2 years, we have been incorporating 2014, and then with the World Expo, the Wiki Expo project, and all the things that we have been doing, I strongly believe that Expo has been really the amazing platform that has been able to connect everyone and to highlight the topic of feeding the planet energy for life. So food, energy, sustainability, and planet. That was the main topic. So that's, I think, has been an incredible opportunity. Starting from that, of course, the entire awareness about the topic have been increasing like crazy. So now also my grandma probably knows what is a food tech company. But anyway, everyone is going to start thinking, oh, you can also eat crickets or weird things. But anyway, that for sure, from the media perspective, I've been highlighting this issue, and everybody knows about that. Of course, this has been a huge opportunity also for accelerators, incubators, universities to start to be connected with the broader ecosystem. So you were asking which role Europe is playing. And I can say, and I can see that there are a lot of international accelerators that were opening and operating in the country in the last 2, 3, 4 years, as well as there are a lot of European projects that, of course, are involving the Italian universities and so on. But I still think that we are all in Europe too much living in a silos. So I think that the big goal for the next decade, if we really want to transform the next decade in the next decade really of action to achieve the SDGs, is to pick the SDG number 17 and to start from the partnerships, because without collaboration and without breaking those silos where all scientists speak just between scientists, all industries are speaking just between industries and just the big ones, that are not talking with the small one and are not even talking with the farmers, or restaurateurs are considered out of the food system, we will never solve the complexity and the issues of our sector. And so I think that there are a lot of excellences, and everywhere around Europe, we can find a lot of excellences, but we need to learn really to cooperate. We need to disintermediate, because sometimes procedures and bureaucracy is keeping like in the food chain. There is who's managing all the paperwork is keeping the majority of the energies, and makes no sense. And so I strongly believe that sometimes you miss the value within the flow, and so we need to be focused really on building strong relationship and building efficient platforms, because now we need platforms. I'm not talking just about digital platforms, but platforms that are clearly facilitating relationship and facilitating ecosystem to grow.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things, the FFI does pretty greatly, and over the course of the years, building a network all across the world, from Japan to US to Singapore to China, and other countries that I can count. I wanted to actually extend that sentence, and would love to ask you that regarding all of these new normal, the speak that we have, we're talking about the adapting the agri-food ecosystems, we're talking about the changing production, changing way we consume food, changing we travel, of course. How do you envision the future of agri-food sector based on all of these ecosystems and all of these the organizations that FFI is in touch with, or part of the network? How do you envision a sector, and how can actually even startups, entrepreneurs can position themselves? Like, what would be your insight, your advice to the startups on that?
So I think that in April there were a pretty interesting article coming out on Nature magazine, Nature Research magazine, that was highlighting the fact that we will be able to feed just 1/3 of the planet out of local food produce.
Right.
and local farming. And this, I think, was an interesting starting point to start to think about how might we reshape the chain in a way that is gonna bring value to all the different players of the chain. And when I'm talking about the players, I'm talking about the farmers, I'm talking about the startup that is bringing innovations, I'm talking about the big industries, the retailer, the hotel, the restaurant, the restaurateur, and so on. And going back to the topic of the systemic thinking and the fact of building and say put energies on building a connected system, I think that this is really crucial. And it's crucial because it's within the industry. I think that they need to start to learn from startup how to move fast, how prototype and iterate and implement a fast solution and be ready to change fast, to approach the market in a different way and be ready to fail a project and say, okay, it was wrong, let's restart it. As well, I think that they have to learn how to deal with startup because the startup ecosystem cannot live just in incubator and accelerator.
Right, of course.
Innovators to start to interact with the industry and to be able not to spend years in accelerators, but to go in the market, fail fast, prototype fast, and bring the innovation to the ones that need that. And I think that this is so much needed now. This pandemic has been a very strong natural accelerator, and we have been seeing tons of technologies that we knew since years that have been adopted very fast. Of course, in Asia, we have been seeing that probably in an exponential way because they built an hospital in a week and a zero-touch retail center.
Quite drastic solutions. I mean, it's just coming out from Asia. That's the possibility, right? I mean, I guess like the also the culture to being able to adapt and taking the measures in an extreme way, but also creating an efficient.
Yes, because they say yes, they never argue, and this is the thing. So they made it faster. There were a lot of pros and a lot of cons. So I think that we can try to learn from the experience of other countries. And in every country, we have been seeing a lot of technologies coming up. Something that, of course, touched a lot my heart in some way is what is happening on the agricultural sector. Like almost a month ago, we launched a campaign on change.org to adopt a farmer. And now we're reaching 20,000 signatures. So we have 20,000 people signing to adopt a farmer. And this is a thing. What?
Is it still going on?
Yeah. It's still going on. It's still going on. And we did that together with, probably, I don't know if you know, Giuseppe Savino from WhatsApp in Apulia.
I think I met with him.
I think you met him sometimes
maybe
in our
somewhere. Yeah.
They are amazing. They are really amazing. And of course, having the chance to talk with farmers, but also we have a farm in these 2 months, gave us the opportunity really to see how much farmers that the small one, the one that are maybe protecting all biodiversity, spending their entire life to take care of the soil, of the land, of the culture of a specific region and so on. Those one were the first one left behind because if the big retailers have no space for them, because of course they don't make the numbers that the big retailer need and so on, and they were just selling to restaurants, they were just selling to the local markets, farmers market, they were completely cut out of the system. And that was highlighting a huge lack in the system. And as well, if we talk about another huge issue that is not only protecting the soil, the land, the farmers, the tradition and so on, but also food waste, they were there with cows to milk, place where you couldn't sell the fresh milk, fruits that were going to be wasted, and that's crazy. Absolutely. So you had the best of the product, the best of the knowledge of the specific work and so on, that was completely out of the platform. So what we have been seeing from the technological perspective, so there were tons of hackathons running, digital hackathons and so on. A lot of projects were focused on that. And a lot of platforms were growing to support the farmers.
Right.
We always had technologies, we always had internet, we always had the same tools,
Right, of course.
but we never had the chance to put the project in place because probably there were the need, but there were not this kind of push to make it happen fast. And so for this kind of things, I think that has been a strong accelerator, this situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like one of the outtakes of this crisis is that the changing the whole value chain, as you mentioned. I think one of the prejudgments regarding the food production is that will I get contaminated by this fresh product and this and that, and can we create sort of like the term goes, the contactless production. So that would mean also adding all of these tracking technologies, the sensors, even the blockchain into some extent, and creating actually a new value chain. But also there's the fact that, as you mentioned, the effects of it, such as the food waste, the diminishing efficiency, and coming to terms with the problems that exist over the course of the years, which we create, but also we are talking about also the solutions that we can adapt and changing the whole value chain. And this crisis, as you mentioned, bringing that conversation in and creating that opportunity. But it's definitely going to change. But do you think, I wanted to actually extend this question as well, since we're talking about the changing value chains and changing perspectives. Do you think the consumption habits will change as well? So for example, I've seen a lot of articles regarding the alternative protein. I'm seeing a lot of articles of the demand of them, and maybe some of the startups moving actually on this field more rather than before, which they were actually, a lot of interest going on with this sector. But now we're talking about, the algae-based, plant-based, some lab grown going on, if they can able to actually, take down the cost of it down. But all of these stuff, do you think this pandemic will also affect how we consume as well? Since we talk a lot about, production, how do you envision the consumption side?
So we have been managing also a survey during the pandemic, and also we are running a second one now. Mm-hmm. And actually, from our analysis, there are some interesting insights coming out of. The first one is related to food waste. So if before the pandemic, we were wasting the majority of food around our personal life in homes, now we're wasting almost nothing. So the 60% of people is saying that is wasting less than before, and the 33% of people is saying that is wasting almost nothing. People at home now, spending breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home, is much more able to plan the pantry, to plan what to cook, how to cook, how and what to preserve. So pickling, doing sourdough, making yogurt at home, and all of those things. So this in some way is very positive. Then people have been starting really reconnected with their body. Sometimes I would say, at least myself, I've been eating on the go for the last 3 years, every single day. So it's been quite a nightmare. Sometimes you eat what you find. You eat in an airplane. You eat randomly. You try to take care of yourself, but you cannot find always the kombucha you love. But you have to adapt to what you find around. And so this has been for sure a very interesting topic. But I think that the strongest effect has been made on the psychological aspect, on the behavioral aspect, because of course, in the first period, we've been enjoying so much and cooking with our roommates, our family, our husband, our kids. That was something that probably with our grandmas we were doing. Now we brought back this tradition of sharing something in the kitchen, around the kitchen. Mm-hmm. Probably some of those habits are going to stay also in the next future, mainly because also the experience out of home, at least in the first months of this phase 2, is going to be different from before. And so probably you can enjoy more the sharing in different environment, because out there, because of the responsibility and because the level of trust and hygiene that is required, you cannot maybe have a real social meal where you're sharing, you're toasting, and you have your friends around the table. Now we have tables that actually are allowing people to respect all the social distance requirements. Right. There are glass and so on. So maybe you're thinking, I'm going to celebrate my birthday in a glass box, or I make a dinner at my home or in a park or in another environment, and I find a space where I can engage more, because food is all about that. Food is not just the fuel we're eating. Every time we eat, actually, there is something connected to this food, except when I'm on the go, that you eat what you find. But then if you have to choose what to eat, yeah, you're choosing something that is giving you pleasure, that is the food of a feast, of a celebration. So food has always a cultural things connected, an identity things connected, a ritual. So we have to keep this very clear in mind, because food is representing much more than just the food we're eating, but right, is the entire experience connected to that.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. As you mentioned, it's a ritual, and it's a tradition. And even if it's not, you had the time before, now we do. I mean, I can't count how many conversations that I have started with, oh yeah, I'm trying sourdough because it's impossible to find yeast now. It was that, and then, or I'm testing out this recipe, testing out this cakes, and testing out this and that. And even some of my friends I'm seeing, on Instagram, they're sharing food photos, which was just like random to see. But it's also like, I find it exciting. For example, because for me, I use social media quite heavily on consuming content on food as well, and now all of the content that we produce on food too, and that creates also the culture of cooking more and sharing more, as you mentioned. Because as you said, you cannot really go out as you do back in the day, like you having long tables outside in the restaurant for 20-25 people, maybe for about a year, or maybe for a couple of years. We'll see how this will turn out. But still, the situation that we have right now, I mean, people are I think it's easy to say fall in love again with food. And it's also start asking these questions about where did it come from, who produced it, and all of the rest of the details. Before we continue, actually, I wanted to check the questions that we have. We have three from our attendees. So one of them is actually it's a longer question. So it's from Iram Gürses. So she's asking, what are the concrete problems of agriculture, and how can they cope with technology? In context of the first question, what are the startup companies that and suggest that are tackling the problems in agriculture? Or is there anyone that you would like to give as an example?
So I think that there are two topics that fascinate me the most related to agriculture. The first one is the topic of water. Mm-hmm. Because anyway, the topic of water is crucial. We also launched a water initiative this year, really because of that. And when you see how much water is used for agriculture, and how inefficient is agriculture now, you start to cry. Yeah. Because anyway, the 70% of the water in the world is used for this purpose, and still there's not enough technology on that. Yeah. With smart farming and smart irrigation, you can save up to the 90% of water. And there's a lot of people thirsty in the world. The water is not equally distributed. Right. And we see, and we have example of very performing agriculture that adopting technology can really find solutions and tackle this issue also in locations that are full of drought. Right. So I think that one big topic can be the one of implementing water efficiency in agriculture at every level. And this, I think it's pretty interesting. There are tons of technologies related to that. There's an endless list, but I think that semi can give also some interesting connection, because also is your topic water. So probably there are in your MENA region some technologies for that that you can suggest.
Sure.
And also we managed last year the Agri-Food Award of UNIDO, the United Nations Agency for Industrial Development, and we were the partner of UNIDO on this project, and we had like hundreds of projects applying. Many of them were focused on smart farming, with a strong focus on the MENA region. So I think that this is a big topic. Another topic is tackling food loss in the pre-harvest environment. So I think that the other big issue is food loss and waste. When we talk about food waste, of course, we are talking about all the food we waste at the retail and the food service, canteens and homes. But when we talk about food loss, is what is happening in the field, and sometimes there are products that are not matching with the standard requirement, with the shape, how they've been produced, and so on. And there's a lot of products that go to be wasted, as well as there are a lot of other sub-products that nowadays maybe are just a cost for the farmers or for the food industry, that can become new product, can become new value, and can give life to sub-products that can develop brand new branch of business as well. We have been doing a lot on that, and I always mention a startup in Iceland that is one of the most amazing that impressed me. And this startup is not in agriculture, but they are a fishery company, and they created a patent using the skin of the cod, of the salmon, so the skin of the fish, that is something that you always waste. Right. And they patent a way really to create new band-aid that are, let's say, saving your skin and regenerating your skin like the 70% faster than any other medicine or something like that. So from the sub-product, something that yesterday was thrown in the garbage, maybe you can find something that is even more valuable than your product itself. Absolutely. So I think that water and waste are two areas in which we can do a lot of innovations.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not in there, but like I can feel this question. So would you categorize that startup as a food startup or a health startup? I'm just out of curiosity. Because this is sort of like a question that I keep hearing, and I always go with, well, it's a food startup.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. This is the issue of the silence. Are you gonna put the startup in a food accelerator or biotech? I don't know. The thing is, innovation is needed. And so maybe from food, you can go into pharma. From food, you can go into skincare and beauty, or in energy. Absolutely. We live in such a complex system, hyper-globalized, and we cannot tell from tomorrow we're not globalized anymore. We are globalized. My brother family comes from everywhere in the world. So the future food family is spread all around. And I'm Italian, I'm European, I strongly believe that, but I'm a world citizen, I'm a global citizen. So we cannot avoid that. Right. But we need to preserve the local heritage, the culture, the biodiversity, and so on. And so it's tough to balance every single day with globalization, and as well protecting our identity, our cultures, our local terroir, and so on. But we have to do it. I think it's the value. Stronger together, yes, but also stronger with our identity. We want to have unique, valuable relations. If everyone's become the same, it's going to be very boring. So it's not so easy to preserve both aspects, and requires energy and a lot of thoughts and care.
Absolutely. I'm going to move into the other question since it's coming slowly. But before we continue, actually, I can give, as you mentioned, just one startup just comes up to my mind, which I find quite fascinating. It's not in MENA, but it's actually in India. It's called the Next Drop. I find it really fascinating because you probably heard of them.
I heard of them.
Yeah, it's so basically what they do is that I'll really explain really quick so that we'll have more time with the questions. But what they do is that they create a sort of like a system where the villagers can track in their mobile phones when they will have water in their village, and the data coming directly from municipalities and water distributing agencies by the government. So it's integrated with when, you know, it's integrated with the governmental system of providing water to these each villages, because the problem in India, because it's a huge country, it's a vast geography, so it's hard to keep track, you know, in which village, you know, when they receive water, and some of these villages need water to produce food, not just to actually feed themselves, but it's also, you know, where the agricultural fields exist that, you know, provides livelihood to those villages. And what Nextdrop does is to create sort of like an alarm system for those villagers to say, you know, hey, you will have water in your, you know, in your village fountain for, you know, 3 days or, you know, 3 hours. Be sure to collect this, because otherwise they might not know when they will have water, and this will create a problem for them to sustain their life, basically. So I'll continue with the other question. The second question is from Fabio Armelini. He's asking, in your opinion, what is the most critical problem to increase the percentage of B2B food surplus recovery, build a unique platform, technological sustainability of the business model, logistic costs, investors?
It's a little bit of mix of all of those issues.
Right.
And I think that the biggest barrier always is the mindset. Because sometimes there are all the opportunities to start an innovative project, but it's not so easy to break the status quo and having someone in the management chain that is taking the responsibility to implement stuff like that. I think that this is something so much needed, because the surplus in the B2B field is huge, and there are a lot of channels that have been open also during this pandemic. I think that probably even more we're gonna feel the need of that in the next months, because anyway, I go back to the two previous point, the starting point. So in the next months, we're gonna have millions of families that are gonna find issues on finding food, also in our evolved and very smart world. But then there's going to be millions of unemployed people. Right. And so all the surplus needs to be preserved and managed with this kind of purpose. So I think that there is probably a need of implementing more regenerative business models, thinking about building prosperity. Sometimes, even if we work a lot with food industries, and so we are very connected with them. I think it's crucial to help the food industry, because we know that we cannot feed the planet with the local farmers. I think also that we are producing so much, because yes, still we have to feed 1 billion people by 2050, but we are wasting 1/3 of the food that is produced. Yeah. And this is a shame. Food is not equally distributed, and I think that industries decentralizing, reshaping the chain, recreating a value that is shared with all the different players within the chain, I think they can do a lot to solve some part of the issue. But they cannot do it by themselves. Right. It's going to be a cooperative effort, and every part of the chain needs to be involved, but needs also to get value and credit, because now the value is hyper-centralized just at the end of the chain. Right. The value, the money, and the innovation is mainly there. So we need to find a way to bring value, knowledge, education, and so on within the entire chain.
Absolutely. I mean, I wanted to just like add one more sentence to what you mentioned. As you mentioned, we are coming back to our tradition of basically cooking food, and a lot of people are actually wasting less. You mentioned up to 70-80% less compared to the before the pandemic. One of the huge issues regarding food waste is the restaurants. I mean, as an ex-chef, I can comfortably say that's just like the major part of the food waste issue. And we're talking about the restaurants are closing all across the world, in some parts of the world, slowly opening up. But it's also affected the whole value chain, the sourcing. But in the meantime, the waste. So maybe it's also the fact that we are wasting less at homes, and this could also affect how the food is produced in the restaurants as well. And it could be interesting to see becoming wasteless restaurant systems instead of some interesting examples of doing this, but becoming the norm of being a restaurant. I think this would add a lot of value on the food waste. I wanted to continue to the next question. I'm trying to find. Oh, okay. So this question from Didem Masunlar. So she's asking, do you see a magic bullet for tech adaptation in farming? How do we make sure the farmer access to tech innovation is improved and can be inclusive too? I trust the big food really wants to change, but are they giving back enough to the ecosystem? Are they fast enough to transform themselves? So what do you think?
It's a big question. So I think that in some way, the entire political strategy around agriculture have been also educating us in a wrong way, because all the subsidies and the policies that sometimes are allowing us as farmer to produce, and they pay us to just keep the produce, and those produce are not going to reach any table tomorrow. Right. Or something that is going to happen now in Italy, because restaurants are going to be closed. And so for people who are producing wine, they have this kind of green, I don't know how do you call it, la vendemmia verde. So basically, they are going to be supported by the state with the kind of a grant to cut now the grape and keep going farming without having any wine. Because of course, if not, there's going to be too much wine in the market and the entire price is going to decrease. Right. And so there are a lot of political support on those kind of actions, and probably not enough have been done in the past to bring technology in the farming system. So I think that probably in the next future, something that I really would love to see is concrete investment to support farmers to transform their companies, but not only to pay for hardware, because hardware is available and nowadays is also becoming cheap. What needs to be trained is the mindset. And this is a huge lack. Like what we have been seeing in schools, everywhere now, everyone is doing homeschool. Right. Here, at least in our country, in the last 10 years, the minister have been supporting the renovation of technical equipment, and everybody was buying hardware. But no one was training teachers to switch the mindset and not just create the digital school because you are buying the new projector and the new computer. Right. Digital school is the mindset of teaching in a digital way, using technology to become an enabler, not just the medium to talk to you today. So you can learn and develop new skills out of that. And so the same problem is in the farming system, because there's a cultural barrier, and it takes time to talk with people. It takes time to educate people. So going back to the question, I think that there are huge opportunities on that, but sometimes also on how Europe is writing grants, states are writing grants, and so on. Everybody's focused sometimes on supporting to buy new equipments, but not to produce connection between farmers, knowledge, collaboration, hackathon, idea creation, and so on. And so I think that a lot can be done involving people and investing on building human connection and knowledge.
Excellent. I mean, you always talk about this. Education takes a lot of a big chunk of the future and of the change. One of the takes I get from all of the conversation that we have right now. We have to dive into the education. We have to dive into the building global conversation. And the networks, building networks that enables the conversation between the producers, the companies, the entrepreneurs, the NGOs, the governmental organizations. But I wanted to actually, slowly finish it off. But like before we sign up, I would love to, talk about the initiative, because since FFI focuses heavily on education, but also develops acceleration programs, also have a vast network of startups. Which one do you see for the future has more initiative? Let me explain what I want to say. So basically, we're talking about education. That means building the educational platforms within schools, but it's also in the meantime raising the future entrepreneurs to develop these solutions. Should we wait that change, the revolution happen from as a grassroots, or should we focus on the changing the agendas of big corporations or governmental, or should we just as startups, as entrepreneurs, just take the initiative and just go for it? Like, which one do you see more impact in short term and the long term?
I answer you with a prototype that we have been doing last summer together with FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, and this is becoming one of our staple projects. So last year we organized 3 bootcamp that are focused on training food and climate shapers. So thinking about the empowerment of people that can become instant problem solvers. And we did this experiment, not working with the target, not working with the startup, or not talking with the industry, or not talking just with the students, but creating a program that was involving the 3 targets together. So 1/3 were young students, say Greta Thunberg friends, young activists, the ones of Friday for the Future that want to change the world, but they need to become problem solver, not only advocates.
Right.
Then we involved the startup that were coming with a specific knowledge, a technology, something that needs to be applied, but you can apply that if you have the industry with you, if you have the policymaker with you. And so the last third was represented by senior leaders. For an entire week, they were working together on a challenge base, and they had to take a pledge at the end. And the solution for me is not to invest just in startup, because within the industry, we have millions of jobs. Those industries anyway are feeding ourselves, are still making sure that we have food in the retails, because at the end, we have to feed the broader society. And on the other end, we need the scientists and the knowledge of science. And we have to raise the youth. We cannot just keep investing in one. And again, probably I'm becoming boring, but when I'm talking about breaking the silos, I really think that we need to force ourselves to be able to learn from a student, to be able to learn from the policymaker, to be able to bring our value and to work together. Right. Has been a revolution. The senior one that were participating, we of course asked to some that were confident about what we do, so they were trusting us. At the end, they were shocked. They said, I was not even imagining that I could learn something from a kid that has the same age of my son, from a 17 years old guy. And I spent an entire week to design something with him that can be useful for my company. And as well was happening for the startupper that said, oh, but I was talking with the super manager that he discovered that needs my technology. And the young guy said, oh, but I've been very inspired by this startupper. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to study AI.
Right.
And that's amazing. So we need to facilitate the collaboration between different generations and different environments, because if not, we're not going to solve the issue, because everyone is going to just have his own perspective.
Excellent, Sarah. Excellent. So before we close our session, is there anything you would like to add, or any information you would like to provide to our attendees, or people who are viewing this webinar? Any sign off?
I think that the most interesting thing is that we would love to keep going, being connected with you, because what you are doing in Turkey is amazing and is exactly representing what we are all saying. So we need to keep going, collaborating and connecting the ecosystem. We are turning part of our boot camps, those kind of boot camps, in a digital version. So we are starting the digital boot camps in July. So everybody is welcome to join. Actually, from tomorrow, there's going to be all the information, because we are announcing that we unfortunately have to cancel many of the dates that used to be in person, but from 2021, we hope we can restart them again. So if you want to be connected on futurefood.academy, there are all the informations about the programs, and then be in touch with me, with Semi, with the communities like us that are trying really to connect the dots, because this is really a mutual effort that we have to do. And what you were saying about the restaurants is important. What we were saying about the farmers is important. So I invite all of you really to think about who are the players and support the ecosystem, because in the next one, we're going to see a lot of changes. We will see food producers that are going to jump into the service, restaurateurs that are start to produce food. All the roles are going to be reshaped, and we need to make sure that we can support the evolution of this ecosystem.
Excellent sign off, Sarah. So thank you so much for joining us today and being the first guest speaker in our journey in the EU region. And thank you so much for your kind words and answering all of these questions. And looking forward to seeing you in our next webinars as well. And thank you so much for everyone who's joining us today. You will be able to see the recording of this webinar in our YouTube channel. If you can just log in to the YouTube and just type in Kök Projekt. And as just Sarah just type into the chat, if you would like to know more about Future Food Institute, Future Food Academy, Future Food Network, you can log into futurefood.network or .academy, or just type in Google Future Food Institute, and you will see all of the great stuff that the Sarah and team are doing. So thank you so much for everyone joining us today, and we'll see you on the next webinar. So take care and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
It's been great to be with you.
Same here, Sarah. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.